I'm excited to share this conversation with Coach Jeff Wetzler with you. Coach Wetzler speaks about building resilient athletes, the health of athletes, the mindset of athletes, how to deal with failure, and how the weight room can be an integral part to developing that resiliency. So please enjoy this Hardball Talks with Coach Jeff Wetzler. Welcome back to Hardball Talks, the podcast that is the collision between sports and life. And my name is Brett Swip, and today we are joined by Jeff Wetzler, Director of Hitting and Performance with Extreme Baseball and Softball Club. Jeff, a quick 15-second introduction.
All right. First off, thanks for having me. Jeff Wetzler spent the last 6 years coaching at junior colleges at Parkland College and Swip in Belleville. Specialized in the player development side, been running the hitting side and the strength side for the past 6 years for those teams.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining. And Jeff, you and I have gotten a chance to kind of talk philosophy, talk shop over the past few months. And I just wanted to provide an opportunity for us to dive into the word resilient. And I use that word only because you use that word when you were talking about sort of your philosophy in the weight room and in training. You desire to build resilient athletes. So let's just start with, what is a resilient athlete?
I mean, first off, you can think a resilient athlete is somebody that doesn't give up. They don't stop at a challenge. They're willing to push through any kind of barrier that's going to block them from their success. But resilient in the weight room, we're preparing the body for competition. We're preparing the body to perform at its best. And so making sure that our athletes are healthy out on the field is obviously going to be priority number one.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit more on the health side. So developing resilience and being a healthy athlete, how are you trying to increase health with your athletes?
I mean, there's just movement preps that we do before our main lifts. I see a lot of time, athletes will go into the gyms, maybe do a few arm circles, maybe a few hip movements just to get the body loose, and then they go into some heavy training. And that probably works to a certain extent, but that's not going to be good for us in the long term. So making sure that there's actual body prep that goes into what kind of movement we're trying to do that day. So on a day that we might be doing some heavy legs, some heavy squats, we're going to see some box drops, some single leg drops, some jumps, movements that have our body accepting the force and getting our joints, the knees prep for those heavy squats. On a day that we're doing some heavy presses, such as bench or overhead press with a barbell, we're going to do some chest drops. We're going to do some med ball presses, just push-ups, and then some tricep extensions just to get the joints, everything warmed up, making sure there's no stone left unturned there.
And then on the mindset side, kind of the resilience that you're wanting to build around the mindset that the athletes have. How are you bringing that into your training?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to have that mindset of getting underneath a heavy bar, every week and trying to push it. So progressive overload, we're wanting our guys to get 5-10 pounds more on their squat, bench, deadlift, whatever the main movement is, each time they come in, but knowing like it's going to be hard and being willing to push through it and also be willing to fail with it. It takes a lot just to get underneath that weight, but knowing that we built up a base and a foundation that they can handle that, and they can be successful in those movements.
I hear you talk about with the athletes about making sure that they bring failure into their training, whether that's in the cage or in the weight room. First off, why is that important in your mind?
One, with baseball being a game where you're going to fail more than you succeed, we got to be able to handle failure. And if the only time that we're failing is out on the field, that's a really tough time for an athlete to learn how to handle failure in the midst of competition. You could see people blow up, they get angry, they want to complain, and they might throw some things in the dugout. But if we have some sort of failure component in the weight room, in the cages, and in practice, then we can help those athletes work through those failures and kind of how to accept it, kind of take that step back, slow it down, and recenter themselves and be ready to go for the next one. Versus they're out on the field, maybe it's a big spot, they strike out, they walk a guy in a big spot, they make an error, and then all of a sudden they're throwing their glove, they come in the dugout, they throw their bat, they throw their helmet. That can't be the first time that they are introduced to failure. with the game being so big on failure and our successes are very little, we got to make sure that the practices, training, and everything has that component of failure, so it teaches us when we have that growth.
How can that be accomplished in the weight room?
Pushing our bodies. We have guys in here, when we have teams, like we have spotters for a reason, we have safety rails for a reason. You are expected to push yourself to the point of failure on your lifts. Now, that doesn't mean if we have a set of 5, we're not failing on rep 2. Like that 5th rep of our set should be really hard. It should be almost near failure. So it just kind of gives that comfortability, like, hey, that 5th rep shouldn't go up as easy as the first one. It should. If it is, we know that we're not pushing ourselves hard enough, and having good coaches in here. And if I see a guy and they are doing, pretty lightweight and they're moving at the same speed for all 5 reps, I'm like, hey, let's add 10 pounds on there. Let's push it a little bit.
Yep. What about the healthy stresses? What's the best way inside the weight room to stress out the body, train the whole body? What's your focus there?
I'm really to limit the amount of stress. I use a thing called RIR, reps in reserve. So like to help build up that base and so we can handle those stresses, RIR is something that I use. So like on bench, like let's say we have a set of 5, but RIR is 3. So we're going to be doing a weight that we could probably do 8 to 9 times, but we're only doing it for that 5. So then like the next time it's RIR 2. So we're going up a little bit. So instead of guys coming in thinking, oh, I got to do a 5 rep max right away. No, like especially if guys haven't been in the weight room all summer because they're traveling all summer, they're doing tournaments. It's really hard to be consistent in the weight room in the summer. So these guys don't have the same training age and consistency over the summer that some others have. So reps in reserve is a good way to handle that stress. That way, once we get into late of October and November, when games are kind of done, they have that foundation and they can handle those heavy loads and those stresses with no reps in reserve.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When you talk about with your athletes about certain parts of the body that are position specific, maybe, or how should they, if they play a certain position, how should they adjust their training? What are some of your philosophies and beliefs around that?
I mean, really where we're at, our guys got to get stronger in every facet. I think not shying away from any movements is how we build resilient athletes. We will overhead press. We're going to bench press. We're going to barbell row. We are going to deadlift. We're going to straight bar deadlift. So there's really no movement that is going to be pushed to the side because we want to shy away from that. Being a resilient athlete, it's not just resilient legs or resilient core or resilient shoulders or chest. It's the whole thing. It's the whole body. So there's really not any kind of main barbell movement that we're going to shy away from because our guys got to get bigger, faster, stronger, and especially where they're at with their age, that's how we got to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Accountability has been a big focus of yours when you're talking with coaches and athletes. When you think of accountability, when it comes to youth and high school athletes, what are you trying to teach them about or encourage them about when it comes to accountability?
I mean, ultimately, later in their life, you want them to become their own coach. So kind of how do they hold themselves accountable? And the best way to do that is just seeing the weights they're lifting and their progress. If your sprint numbers are going down or going up, you're getting slower. You got to think, well, how many times am I actually putting my full intent into my sprint work? How many times am I actually showing up to the weight room and putting in my sprints? Same goes with any lift. Oh, my bench press has gone down. My velo's gone down. My X velo's gone down. Well, how consistent have we actually been in the weight room? So there's got to be that time where they think, how accountable am I holding myself here? But then also we have apps like Spond that guys can sign in ahead of time, knowing that they're going to be there for such training hours. So we can know ahead of time who's signing up, who's RSVPing in a way, who's going to be in the weight room. But then also in Train Heroic, that is a technology and app that we use for our lifts. As we go through Train Heroic, I can see if I had 8 blocks for that day. Each athlete, I can see, did they complete all 8 blocks or did they only do 7? I can see if they skip a set. So that's just another way where I can go in. It's like, hey, you skipped 2 sets. What's up with that? And like, oh, I thought I finished them. No, you didn't. So they're not just trusting that they're going to do them all done, get them all done and believe they will, but also we have Trainer Oak just to go back on, just to make sure that they are covering all their lifts. And then Spawn, make sure the ones that sign up and said they're going to be there are there, and also a sign-in sheet at the front of the desk. So maybe if they didn't get the Spond app, or their schedules changed, maybe they had a soccer game and their soccer game got canceled because of rain, and now they want to come in and lift. So we got a sign-in sheet, Spond, and then Train Heroic, 3 ways that we can track who's in the weight room, how many times they're in the weight room, and if they're skipping lifts or getting them all done.
So yeah, that's good. There's lots of logistical ways that I think you're trying to monitor accountability. What I heard that word consistency. Trying to get athletes to be consistent. What are some of the talking points or some of the things that you're speaking with athletes about on that?
I mean, really, there's no way around it. You got to put the work in. There's no shortcut. There's no special drill or a special workout that you can do once a week that's instantly going to change you and make you grow. It's going to have to be the work you put in every single day and every single week, and they compound onto each other. One word that, or not one word, one sentence I've been saying to a lot of parents, a lot of athletes is, I think of it training like showering. If you go a few days without it, you're going to stink. And on days that you train, you better go home and shower, because you probably do stink, because we're going to be putting in some good work. But it's just like that. If you go 2 weeks without showering, I mean, even 1 week without showering, your classmates are going to tell you, man, like you smell bad. Like you need some deodorant. Parents are going to be on you about it too. So you got to, I see it as training the same way. Like if you're going to go a few days without training, you owe yourself probably 3 straight days of training, because without that training, you're going to stink. You're going to take steps back. So, just being consistent with the work you put in, because I mean, showing up, they always say, is half the battle, but you still got to put the work in when you're here. So, as many times as you can get in the gym and put that work in is definitely going to pay off.
Yeah. What about effort? I know I hear kids, kind of talk a little bit about what their programming is, and what style of programming they're doing, and while I think you've say that may be important, or you've talked about that could be an important component, but that's probably not more important than the effort that they're putting into the actual lift that they're doing, or the actual movement that they're doing. Speak on your focus of effort.
Yeah, I mean, nothing can get done without your effort. And one thing that I won't say I'm famous for saying it, but a lot of coaches and players that have been around me know that I say, how you do anything is how you're going to do it, or how you do one thing is how you do anything. So if you're willing to, slack off in the weight room, you're probably going to slack off in the cage, maybe slack off at your practice, maybe slack off in school. So it's like, if you're going to do something, give it your full effort. There's no reason to give 50% into anything that you're going to do. And that's training, that's hitting, that's pitching, that's schoolwork, that's sprint work. Yeah, I mean, it's anything. So, I mean, if you're going to do something, give yourself, the benefit of the doubt, and give yourself good effort, because you don't want to be looking back like, oh, if I would have done this, I could have achieved this, or I could have got that scholarship. I could have hit 100 miles an hour. I could have thrown 90. If you're not putting the effort in the weight room and in your practice, those goals aren't going to be achieved. And effort requires
Mhm.
action, and you got to take action.
Mhm. So when you're focused on building resilient athletes, let's talk a little bit about your programming, or how you structure your programming. Um, do you try to mimic the movements that they may do inside of their sport? Do you try to counteract those movements? Maybe share a little insight on what you think the most productive programming is for building resilient athletes.
Yeah, when I look at programming for the weight room, I got to think, what are they getting at practice and what are they not getting at practice? And when I think of hitters, what we're doing at practice, super rotational. Pitchers, same thing, super rotational. We're always rotating. So in the weight room, I always see a lot of guys wanting to do med ball tosses, and that's good. We need to do the med ball scoop toss, but a lot of guys do it wrong. So we want to make sure that if we're doing any kind of rotational movement in the weight room, we're making it mimic the movements that we're doing. All right, we're going to be leaning back a little bit as we do our scoop toss, not leaning forward and kind of pulling it through, as a lot of guys like to do. But then also, what are we not getting in practice? We're not resisting rotation. Yes, we're creating rotation with our swings and within our throws, but there's not a whole lot of anti-rotation. So almost more core work than not in the weight room that I like to program is anti-rotational movements, a pal-off hold, dead bugs, really anything to resist rotation. Because I think if you can resist rotation, you can create rotation. And then plus with, I mean, you can go real deep into it, but there's obviously like a deceleration part of swinging and pitching that the core needs to be able to stop and resist that rotation. So in practice, what we're doing is rotating, rotating, rotating. In the weight room, we're going to do like the exact opposite. We're going to resist that rotation and build a stronger core where we are fighting that rotation. That way, when we get through all the intricacies of and the difficulties of deceleration, our body's built up for it already.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, so if you were to like summarize, maybe put your college coach hat on, what does a resilient athlete look like to you when when they're maybe in the recruiting side or when you're watching somebody from the outside looking in? How would you how can you see a resilient athlete out on the field?
I mean, really, when I would go out recruiting, it's one of the biggest things I would look for is how do they handle failure? And I feel like college coaches say that a lot, and maybe high school players don't understand it, but we want to see how you handle failure. It'd be great to go watch a kid play and he go 10 for 10 that weekend. It's like, man, that kid's probably really good, but we don't really know who you are until you handle failure. So being resilient, it's how you handle everything. Are you willing to cross that barrier? Can you fail, go 0 for 4, but in that fifth spot, come up big for your team and make a diving play, come up with a game-winning hit because the game's not over until that last out is made. So just guys that can handle failure and go through the challenges. Never backing down from a challenge and really never stopping. You just can't. They don't ever quit.
What about on the injury side? What do resilient athletes look like?
They don't take time off from anything. Like just yesterday, I had a guy in the weight room. He had a little hip problem going on. He's like, "Hey, I can't squat, jump, sprint. I can't do any of that." And that's what we had programmed for that day. And I was like, "Well, hey, I'm gonna get these guys through our testing, and then I'll get to you." Then, before I know it, he was over there doing some external rotation for his shoulders. He was doing some dumbbell bench. So he knew that he was limited on what he could do with his lower half, but he took that as an opportunity. Like, well, I'm a little smaller on the upper half. I'm a little bit weaker here. Let me go work on that. So instead of thinking, "Oh, I'm hurt," or I can't do anything lower body day, I just get a day off. No, they're finding ways to still get work in that they can get done.
I've gotten a chance to know you over the last few months, and I mean, one word that I would say that describes you really well is you're a motivated person, and um, what piece of advice do you give athletes when it comes to motivation?
Motivation isn't always going to be there. Motivation comes and goes in waves, but discipline is probably the bigger word that you need to have, and need to have in your life. Is it's hard to wake up every day. It's hard to go to school and then come home from school, do homework, and then come here and train, and then go home and eat and get probably more homework done, and then go to sleep so you have plenty of sleep and you're well rested for the next day. So it's a little bit more discipline than motivation. Your goals should motivate you, but your actions every day and day in and day out should show discipline. So I think I am a highly motivated individual, but I also think I'm very well disciplined as well because there's going to be times where I'm not motivated. It happens, but I know, like, if I can just, on days that I'm not motivated, get in there, put in the work, and pour into the athletes, it's gonna pay off. It's those days that you don't feel motivated on. What do you do?
hmm hmm I see you trying to build really strong relationships with athletes. Um, what's maybe talk a little bit about why you think having a relationship with your athletes is important.
And that's how you get buy-in from them, and knowing that I have their best interest in mind. Like I wish I could have played in the big leagues and could keep playing and playing in the postseason right now, but I've made some mistakes along my journey. Uh, I didn't get to play at that high level. So the relationship I'm building is like, I want you to be better than I ever was. I don't want you just go play college ball and that's it. I want you to go on to play pro ball. I want you to get to higher levels than I was. I love it when guys are better than me. I don't want to be, um, that coach that's always like, well, I did this, I did this, I did this. Like, I want you to learn from my mistakes and know that I'm here for you. So just, guys text me after a weekend, they send me videos. It's like, hey, what do you think? It's like, I love it. So it's like the open communication as well with that. Just knowing like, you're not here for me, I'm here for you. So you use me pretty much however you want, and however I can help you, I want to. Even if it's help you for one day, I'm gonna take that time out of that one day to help you if I can.
Something that I've seen in your actions that's pretty special is obviously you have a lot of experience with high level athletes, being a college coach, and being around those guys that go on and play at the next level. But I also see you pour into the young athletes, the 8, 9, 10, 11 year olds that I see you forming relationships with them and motivating them and giving them a ton of energy and effort. Maybe share why helping the younger athletes get comfortable in the weight room or get comfortable with their body. Why is that something that you are motivated to help as well?
As far as the weight room, I was kind of that kid in high school that I got in the weight room way too late. Maybe it was I was uncomfortable being a little bit on the weaker side and wasn't willing to work through those struggles that I couldn't bench a plate. And like it was in my mind, it was kind of embarrassing to have that happen. So letting them know like, hey, it's your journey, it's your progress. Like if you can lift 25 pounds, you lift 25 pounds. The kid next to you might be lifting 50, but don't worry about them. Don't compare yourself to them. Then also I had a hitting coach that I started working with when I was 9, and just the environment that he created and the relationship that we had. I worked with him until I was done with high school. So for 9 years, I worked with him consistently once a week on Sundays. Sometimes in season we go twice a week, but it's kind of like a pay it forward type thing. Like he poured into me, and like in return, I'm pouring into the younger athletes. And I think the more comfortable and confident and enjoyable that baseball can be for them, the harder that they're going to work. So, I mean, young athletes, it's kind of special to see that spark in their eye, like that they want to get ready and go to work. And then there's just a lot more that goes into it. So if we can get into them early and get them to understand the processes and how to progress, and not to compare yourself to others, but run your own journey, that's pretty special. Because I was a kid that I was really small, I was really weak, ended up being a little late bloomer, but I didn't really try to compare myself to others. Like I was running my race.
That's awesome. Well, let's maybe for the last few minutes here, let's get to know Coach Wetzler a little bit more. I got to coach with you this weekend, and I didn't know you were a left-handed swinger. So out there popping some fungo with lefty, and then I saw online you swinging that golf club left-handed. So is that something that I don't know why that catches people off guard, but it caught me off guard.
It actually catches a lot of people off guard. Even the guys that I had, in college for a couple of years, like I'm hitting them fungos every day. I'm hitting you in and out every day. And then there's always going to be that one time at practice where maybe someone new is shagging maybe a different catcher, or we're doing some kind of rotation, and they just like stand next to me. They look at me. They're like, "You're a lefty?" I was like, "Dude, I hit you fungos every day. Like, how do you not know this?" But I do know some people that hit lefty, like baseball swing, but then they hit clubs righty. I've tried golfing right-handed. It's not gonna work for me. There was a time that I did some putting right-handed, but I kind of switched off from that. I putt. Everything is left-handed now.
All right. And then if people follow you on socials, they'll you know get the daily review of caffeine drinks. I think that's what I 6.1s out of 10. And what's your go-to pump up drink?
My go-to has been anything Ghost Energy. I like the flavors they got. I think it's pretty clean. It's good caffeine. Some ones to definitely stay away from are like the big dogs, like Go or not Ghost. That's the one you want to go for. But like Monster and Red Bull, those are not good for you. But being a coach and kind of being in this environment in this realm, you got to have energy. And for me, caffeine is going to be where I get it from. And not everybody's as much into caffeine like I am, but almost daily I'm gonna have an energy drink. I got a coffee right here, get my morning started. So, but probably the best I've had so far is probably the blue raspberry Sour Patch Kid goes. That's the go-to. I like to try different ones just to, you know, try new things out. But if I know it's like, man, I need one that's good, it's gonna be that blue Ghost.
Yeah, well, that's for the kids because all of us old timers are like, that sounds absolutely disgusting. So, um,
Yeah, I got a little
what
bit of a sweet tooth in me too.
yeah, where can people follow you?
So on Instagram, my coaching account is coach_Wetz, Wetz. My personal one, I do post some on my personal one, but I like to keep that more in my personal life. But if guys are going to work with me, training wise, hitting wise, I want you to also get to know me on a personal level. That my Instagram for that is Jeff_Wetzler, Wetzler. TikTok and Twitter both are coach_Wetz, same as my coaching account. But then also Treign Performance has an Instagram as well. It's Treign_performance, and it's Treign TREIGN_performance.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for the time.
I appreciate it, Brett. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to this Hardball Talks, and we will see you on the next one.